G'day and welcome to Marc and Cars Porsche Talk podcast, the podcast where we talk all things Porsche, from air-cooled, water-cooled, rear engine, front engine, even mid-engine. There'll be something here for you. But most importantly, we're going to talk to the people who are passionate about our favourite brand. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen today, and if you've got any input, suggestions, comments, anything, please send me a message. You'll be able to catch me on nearly all social media platforms as Marc and Cars, or just send me an email. Anyway, let's get on with the podcast. Well, welcome everyone to episode 2. I've got a special guest here today, Jeff from Homebuilt by Jeff. Thanks very much for joining us today.
No worries, mate. Happy to be here.
Great. So I've been following your channel for a couple of years now. I've been really enjoying it. It's a very different type of YouTube product with a similar enthusiasm and theme to what I do myself. So, and we're both quite sympathetic Porsche enthusiasts, obviously.
I'm definitely a Porsche tragic. I'm not one-eyed, but I do have 4 Porsches now, which is pretty.
Yeah, that sounds four-eyed to me, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. But I do have an Alpha as well. So
sure, and I'm sure anyone that's listening to this podcast or watching the podcast on YouTube will be familiar with your channel, no doubt, if they have anything to do with mine. Just because I'm sure we have a lot of common threads, between viewers.
Definitely.
And just see if I can just discuss your YouTube channel for a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. So I see you recently passed 100,000 subscribers.
Yes, I'm looking up at the plaque on the wall now. Finally got the plaque, which I know yourself would also be pining for. I was for many years. I've been doing this for over 5 years now, and it's a lot of hard work, as you well know, to actually get there. And I'm really grateful to everybody who watches my silly videos in the garage that help me get there.
Well, congratulations! It's an amazing achievement, and it is as big as an achievement as it is. You know yourself as a content creator how hard it is to achieve that outcome. You're not a 14-year-old boy, free falling out of an aeroplane without a parachute to try and get the views or anything like that. You're doing the hard yards to do it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't start it to be a channel. I mean, maybe I secretly hoped it might actually turn into something, but
sure.
But I had my original car, my orange 911, and that was a black rusty heap, and I was about to start restoring it. I thought, instead of just having a build thread on a forum and just posting up photos every now and then, I thought, how about I do little videos of it? That's something that I would watch. So I thought, well, how about I sort of contribute and do my bit to do it? And then, as I'm sure you know as well, like once you sort of post something up and you get like your first 100 views, and you're like, wow, there's 100 people out there who want to watch my silly little video. Like it's like, and that gets you spurred on to do more, and I've sort of, it got bigger and bigger, and obviously I got a bit better at the editing and stuff like that. I'm still far from an expert, and I still and and I'm not the smoothest on camera, but
do you find that you edit out much of your talking? Are there blocks where you go, what was I even talking about here, and just go chop chop chop?
Yes, I do. Sometimes often I know that I sort of mess it up, so I stop and I start again. And because I think it helps the fact that I'm editing it, so I know how to try and talk so that I can re-edit it again reasonably smoothly. I know at the start I used to and heaps, and I'd chop it too much, and people would see it sort of like it kept jump cutting everywhere, and it was horrible. So, I mean, I've gotten better at being able to get things across, but people still give me heaps about my umming and ahhing and whatever. I'm just a guy working.
They're watching, and that's how they know, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, that's it. Look, I just am an enthusiast like the rest of us, and I just happen to just chuck a camera in the corner of the garage while I'm doing it. That's yeah.
Do you watch much YouTube?
Yeah. I watched probably almost half of any all viewing I do is YouTube videos. I follow lots of other channels out there.
Sure. And do you support much of the Australian content with other car builders or car enthusiast channels? Like obviously 2/3 of the Australian population obviously, watch Mighty Car Mods, and those guys do an amazing job. But I was just curious, is there other channels out there that some of the viewers might not know about, or you think that are worth spending your time on?
I mean, I'm actually in the process of trying to organise an Aussie YouTuber challenge at the moment. So I've been talking to a lot of the big build
Fantastic.
channels to try and do a sort of the emphasis is more on getting our cars from all of our channels, like that people would know, to compete on the track and off the track, but trying to keep it fun rather than having someone who's got the ultimate car that does the
Sure.
best. Try and tailor the whole experience for everyone. And I've been friends with Benny from Mighty Car Mods for quite a while. Benny's Custom Works, that's his channel, and he lives 5 minutes from me. So
Okay.
I was ringing him for advice yesterday, but I've been discussing with the Skid Factory in Queensland. I really, really, really like their work. I mean,
good.
For me, build channels are the things that I really get into. I don't watch a lot of car reviews and things like that because my interest is in the build.
Yeah, creation. Sure. Yeah.
Those guys. But actually, one of the small channels that I've only just started, I chatted to him. It was brought to my attention when I was doing this thing. He's only about 6,000 subscribers, I think. But Hack Shop Garage he's based in Victoria, and he's he does a lot of work on sort of a lot of old Holdens and stuff like that. But they're just really, really entertaining. Banter. Him and his mate just sort of they work together, and I think that they've got a channel that's they're putting out some quality stuff. I think it's worth watching, and I'm happy to sort of help out whoever. I know myself. I suppose I didn't really get much help in getting here, really, besides people sharing that build video of mine. But I'm often reaching out. Colin Byrne, I really, really like his stuff. He's an alpha guy, but he's building. He's only 2,000 subscribers, which is way undersubscribed. He does fantastic stuff, and he's building a Stratos. Rally car, and that's he does a lot of high-end engineering stuff. But he always makes sure he has a safety beer first, which is entertaining.
That all sounds good. I'll definitely have to check out some of those channels that you've done. I'm unfamiliar with a few of them. It's interesting you mentioned the term undersubscribed. There's a couple who do some amazing cinematic car review style videos in Japan called Claire and Ayesh, and they just do these amazing edits, and it's like going to the cinema is the only way to describe it. And it's just everything's just sweet perfection, and they share it or they send me a message, say I posted a new video and it's got like 400 views, and I'm going, this is heartbreaking. Like, they've put a week into this edit at least, but that's just how it is sometimes. They just people getting ground or traction with the right audience at the right time. It's fascinating. But I did have someone mention to me, I mentioned to them that we were going to have a discussion that this person mentioned to me that they reckon you're a genius by making sure you bring a pretty face, that being your wife, Mrs. Jeff, onto the video on a regular basis so they don't have to look at your mug all the time. And I thought, maybe I need to do something like that too. So,
to be honest, as much as I thought it would help, and I love having my wife as part of the
video, involved.
She enjoys being involved and having something to do. I haven't noticed any measurable metric change with her being in the videos.
Sure.
Like her being in the thumbnail doesn't really make any difference to the view count or anything. But yeah, it's great being able to sort of do it together and you know, I mean, one of my sort of favourite bits is putting her bloopers in the end of the video.
The real shame about that is very few people stay to the end of a video. You know yourself, you know, when you look at your analytics on videos and just the number of viewers at the end versus start is fascinating.
That is, I think, yes, I have my dash hands around here as well. I've got a miniature dash hand as well. I've actually found a lot more people stay to the end of those videos because there is the bloopers.
Fantastic.
There's something to watch all the way to the end, so it's worth hanging around. I mean, a lot of people comment that they go straight to the end.
Is that right? Yeah. So this podcast is Porsche Talk, so I want to talk Porsche.
Yes.
Tell us about Harry.
Harry,
for those who are unfamiliar with the car or your channel.
Yeah, well, Harry, I bought as a bit of a bastard. Really, it's a 1974 911, sold to me as a 1976 911S. It's actually by the VIN. It's a 1974. It's been converted from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. It was a complete car with sort of big patches of bog and rust coming off of it, and a blown engine. It's got the typical 2.7 issue, which is a magnesium case.
Sure.
They built them to run hot. That's when they introduced emissions, and it pulls head studs. And somebody had rebuilt it, and basically what they'd done is when the magnesium is soft, so when it gets hot, it pulls the studs straight, It pulls the threads out. So they put just helicoils in, which is not the way to fix it. But basically with all the head studs, they need to be all perfectly straight and square. And what they did is they must have drilled it out by hand with a potato. And so all the head studs are at all different angles. Their idea is like, if they're not straight, all we have to do is oblong the holes through the cylinders and the heads and everything all the way down to get these heads onto
right?
Everything was done wrong, and I think they said it drove 100 metres and it pulled head studs again. They said they bought the engine on Gumtree or something that was rebuilt, and I'm like, I think they probably did it themselves. It was either way. They obviously tried to rebuild it once and didn't do a good job, and it didn't last. So we repaired it and built it back up. Actually, one of my viewers is Neil Harvey from Performance Developments in Los Angeles, and he's ex-Brabham Formula One, won 2 world championships building their engines, and then he was the head engine builder for Andile, so the Porsche racing in the US.
Good guy to know.
And he reached out and said, do you want to come over and do your engine here? And he let me in the shop, and I did a lot of the machining on the engine, like under his tutelage. And we repaired this engine, and I rebuilt the bottom end at his shop under his watchful eye, and then brought it back here and
as hand luggage?
Sorry?
As hand luggage?
Not quite. Some of it hand luggage, but most of it was, and so basically the engine started life as just a typical mag 2.7, but it's actually now it's a 2.8 twin plug with 10.8 to 1 compression. It's got individual throttle bodies with a e-throttle that I've managed to set up to it. So it's a fly-by-wire throttle, which means I have nice cruise control and everything on the highway. It's great. Obviously it's got an aftermarket ECU. And my thing is that I do everything. So I stripped the car back to bare metal. I fixed all the rust. I built the roll cage. I painted it all. I built a spray booth out of a tent in my garage. Painted it, and I bought a sewing machine, sewed the interior, and I did basically every single part of the car myself, which is sort of what I like to learn how to do things. And that was my test run.
I imagine part of the learning process is you must, as this project's gone on for a few years for you now, you must be looking at stuff you did 2 or 3 years ago, now I know what I know. I'm going to do differently and fix that up. Is there much of that going on with the car, has there?
Definitely. I mean, like Harry, I would like to probably redo one day. Like, it was not bad for the time, but my metalwork skills and a lot of things are so much better now. I would potentially redo it at some stage, but the thing is I'm just enjoying it now.
Last weekend build them to drive them, don't you?
Oh yeah, well, last weekend was Luftwasser 2021, so big Porsche event in Albury Wodonga. It's organised by a mate of mine, Stu, and there were 174 cars, like Porsche sports cars, that turned up. And yeah, Harry copped a beating. It's got a cracked windscreen again after all the headaches I went through the windscreen. It's got heaps of stone chips. It's got like the wheels are still scrubbing on the rears inside the guard, so it's bubbling the paint on the outside.
Wheels too big or just suspension setup? What's the problem there?
Wheels too big. It really would be better with 15s. I've got 17s on it. I stupidly went with 17s back when I first started because Singers had, and they had 17s. And now I realise that's probably not the ideal, but also, I mean, you live and learn, but the car performed fantastically. You know, drove a couple of thousand Ks and some hard kilometres, and I'm really impressed with how it handles the track day in that as well. And it just
you're in Bowral, are you? You're in that area? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you drove from there across to Albury Wodonga?
Yeah. So
good length trip, you know, without being in the car for Perth, so everywhere is a long way away in a car.
Yes.
So, but so what's that? 3.5 hours each way? Is that
5 hours?
Oh, 5 hours. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. And we went the long way, so it took about 5 hours.
Yeah.
But
as you do when you've got an air-cooled Porsche.
That's right. That's right.
And how's the comfort in the car, in the cabin with airflow and stuff like that for for that length trip?
Airflow is the main thing. I actually soon into building the car, I realised that it wasn't going to be a track car because I can't afford to break it all the time. So although it did really great on the track, and it's a car that I will take on these track days, but I built it as a car to do events like that. So to do a road trip, do an event and still be comfortable, because so many of these cars, you get out and your ears are ringing and you just really don't want to get back in the car.
I do own a 356. I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Well, probably not as bad as Outlaw Garage's 356.
No, Scott's cars. You would need noise cancelling headphones to drive from Melbourne up to Albury in that thing, I reckon.
Yes.
Or do a lot of yelling at each other.
Yes, and I mean, I've got a friend in the UK. I actually met him at the Le Mans Classic 5 years ago, and he drove from the UK to Le Mans in his backdate 964, completely stripped out, no interior. But he and his wife wear rally headsets so they can talk to each other and
good way to do it.
Stuff. So but no, for mine, I actually did. I did a lot of research, and I did a 3-layer sound deadening. So really sort of high end sound deadening in the car, which is probably added about 20 kilos to the car. But it's so worth it. I can sit at 120 on the freeway, 110, and it will. You can have a conversation. It's still a comfortable place to be. Mm-hmm. Its only thing is that my car has pretty much no vents. So
so back then they didn't have that centre dash vent yet, did they? Around that era. You said 74, didn't you? Okay,
it's just the SCs had the centre vent.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. But mine's before that, so there's no centre vent. I worked out right at the end of the trip that if I put the demisters on cold, that I sort of get a bit of air coming off the windscreen, or I have the window down and it's really loud. So
no one's ever accused a 911 of being a car with good airflow. Let's face it. So
yes,
whatever you do is even if you've got aircon, it doesn't work anyway. So let's face it.
I do have the benefit that I have the fold out rear windows. So mine's early enough that it actually has, and that actually helped quite a bit, that I popped one of them open with the dash vent on, and it actually gets the flow. Yeah,
my 356, we on the long country trips and stuff we do, I've got the front quarter windows, the old fashioned So you basically turn those all the way around the other way, and that directs the air into you, which is necessarily the combination of West Australian heat and,
yes,
highway cruising speeds.
That would have been fantastic if I had them on the 911, but no, those windows work really well. They just got rid of any ventilation in that car. I think they just thought it wasn't necessary.
Imagine trying to compete in a cars like that had everything stripped out of them in Le Mans for 24 hours, in their class. It would just be excruciating, wouldn't it?
Now they have cool seats and air conditioning and all that.
Cool suits, even.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I meant. Cool suits, not cool seats.
Yeah, sure. And with regards to, you mentioned you've got 4 Porsches now. I know you've got you have 996 too. I've seen on your channel.
Yes. So I mean, it sounds really bad when I say that because but I've got
I'm not a collector, I promise. Yeah.
I'm not. I've just managed to just change everything over. I mean, I got the 996 I bought basically because I thought it was a great daily driver that I could have that's comfortable enough to drive every day because it's much more comfortable than the old car.
Of course it would be.
It's got working aircon and everything else works like a modern car. That I can buy a car that I can drive for a couple of years, put 20, 30,000 Ks on and sell for the same money I bought it for.
Or even more when you look at it, like even the last 6 months have gone ballistic, haven't they?
Yeah, much more. So I've got that. I've got I've also got my the world's ugliest Porsche, or world's ugliest Porsche, which is a Porsche Boxster.
That's harsh. That's going to hurt the podcast.
It is, but
yours might be the ugliest version of it, but just saying the world's ugliest Porsche, that's harsh.
Boxsters can look great, but this particular one is hideous. There are some very, very questionable things done to this car.
I have watched the video of when you first took it, and the door stoppers for a rear diffuser were pretty impressive.
Yeah, exactly. Just wood screwed on and then painted over. But the thing that got my mind boggled the most was the fact that they moulded in driving lights and completely blocked the radiators. Like stopped any airflow at all going to the radiators, which I'm sure is why the engine blew. Even though I'd opened them up, I think the damage had already been done on the track. I think it had cracked. I tried to pull the engine apart after blowing the engine on the racetrack and seeing what happened. And I think basically I couldn't get the head off it. It actually it's through a rod and it's obviously sort of seized the head up. I broke 2 tools trying to get the head bolts up, but I think it's cracked the cylinder lining. It's got water in the sump, and that water has then killed the bearings.
Yeah, okay, that's no good. I assume you bought another daily, have you?
Yes. Well, and basically for 7-8 years, I've had an old my sort of. We don't really have his and hers cars, but my wife generally was driving the tow car, the car that can tow the car trailer and all the rest of it, which was an old Mercedes ML500.
Oh, yep.
And we've just upgraded that to a Porsche Macan. so I have 4 Porsches now.
Yeah, sure. I have the utilitarian version of a Macan. I drive a VW Tiguan as my daily. It's a good soccer mum car, right? Yep. Zero credibility, but I'm really happy with it. In all reality, probably the best car I've ever bought. Because it just does everything easily. And with prior to Harry, had you owned any Porsches?
I had a Cayman S briefly. I had it only for about 3 months. Actually, I bought that first, and then I bought Harry because I paid $16,000 for Harry when I bought it. So getting a complete, even though it's a basket case, a complete Air Cooled Porsche for that nowadays is like unheard of. Yeah. But
lucky to get a set of original Fuchs wheels for an Air Cooled Porsche for that sort of money these days.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I had a Cayman S, but I'm pretty sure it had bore scoring. I loved the car. It was a beautiful car to drive, but
manual.
manual Cayman S. I did the Great Ocean Road in it. I did we had for a little while. It looked great, and it had sort of slightly bigger, wider 19s on it, lowered a little bit because I don't really like how high the Cayman sits standard. Sure. This looked really good. It was great, but you'd have started first thing in the morning. There'd be a 2-car garage worth of blue smoke that had come out of the back of it, and it'd go through 1 or 2 litres of oil every 1,000 Ks. Like it was.
Wowza, yeah, okay, yeah.
For a car that
for that new, it should have been. Yeah, it should have been. It's pretty grim.
Yeah. So I was just so paranoid about driving it. I'd sort of really stretched to buy it, and
okay.
Yeah, and so I traded it, and I traded it on an Audi S5. I couldn't, in good conscience, sell it to another private individual.
Private, yeah, sure, I understand. Yep.
Yeah, so, but the Audi was great. I loved it, even though it was a GT. It was a big, heavy thing.
Sure.
Yeah. I did go on a couple of Porsche runs in it, but. It definitely doesn't handle like a 911.
Yeah. Oh, look at it. It's like you said, it's a big GT car. And with regards to your the cars that you've owned previously, we just mentioned it, Audi. You've got a not too dissimilar pattern of car ownership to myself. I had a Audi RS4 in the past. I've had a 914 Porsche that I imported from the States back in 1993, I think, or 1994. So it was a look, there's your doggy,
Mrs. Jeff with Shorty. It's
look at this! It was a good-looking dog. Look at that one.
Hello, there's a little friend, Shorty.
Just for listeners, we're just comparing dashhounds.
Yes, sorry guys. Sorry. It probably doesn't make very good.
Not great audio. No, but anyway. I had a 914 back in the day, and that was a 2-litre car. It was a lot of fun to own, underpowered as anything. In hindsight, knowing what I know about the cars nowadays,
yes.
I just don't think it was running that well, in all honesty. But I did drive that from Perth to Sydney and back once, which was a pretty fun.
That's a long way to go. Perth to Sydney and back.
Yeah, and back. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was actually a pretty good car. It sat on the Hay Plain. If you were allowed to, it would have done the better part of 170, 180 k's an hour all day, every day. It was just one of those cars just sat like a stone on the road, are just flat and boomper. It was a great little car for a highway.
Take a long time to get there.
Yeah, it's a Type 4 Volkswagen motor. There's no mystery about that. Although these days you can get 250 horsepower out of things, can't you?
Yes. Although that said, you've got a 356, which is not a dissimilar engine. I assume slower or
it's a much more expensive motor to evolve to that sort of power output. Look, a really good 356 would be punching 150 horsepower, and that's not a daily drivable motor. You know what I mean?
But, more in terms of the cars that you had, was your 914, do you think, quicker than the 356 or about the same?
No, my 356 is a faster car.
Okay.
But there's also 25 years of evolution there of, suspension sorting out and metallurgy just for when they rebuild the engines nowadays. They're much better and faster and higher compression ratios, better fuel, all these combinations of things, and electronic ignitions and all this, stuff we take for granted, but that's the reality of, modernizing the internals of any old car. I think whatever car it is, even if people who want to build the concourse, even the quality of spark plugs are better and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Everything. It does make a difference. I mean, like I said, the fuel is a huge part that we can actually just have much better quality fuel these days.
Yep. The other, I also think the modern rubber makes the cars feel better driving experience. Because I had older tyres on the car. I've got 3 sets of wheels that I rotate between just for how I like the look on the car at any moment in time. And I do think that the newer rubber, whilst getting modern rubber in small widths is a challenge on these older cars, and how much more supple and just the cars drive better with, so it's hard not to over rubber the cars as well. And I know this is the case in a lot of older air-cooled 911s where people put newer semi-slicks on them. They're just not as much fun, and the stress you're putting on the car itself because of the amount of grip it has is, pretty challenging just as a driving experience. You can really feel the car struggling with modern rubber pretty much. And especially big wide rubber that you can put on 911s.
Well, I was actually I was warned that I'd overtired the car. I thought I'd overtire the car more because I liked the look of the wider 911. But after having it out on the track, it was great, and I was still I could see it was still a nice linear slip, particularly the particular track we're on at Albury Wodonga. There was it's a TAFE test track. So one of the corners is pretty much like a 270-degree constant curve.
Yeah, okay.
And you could really just sit and play with it, and you can just feel the front and the rear sliding just nicely. But it was very linear. Loss of traction was very linear, very predictable. Didn't want to bite me. It was not like sort of got so much traction, but when it lets go in a big way. It was all very easily controlled and handled really well. The car doesn't doesn't tramline in the cruising road and stuff like that. So I've got two 7.5s on the rear, and I've got two 2.5s on the front.
Yeah, okay.
It's
interesting to hear that because that is big rubber for an old air-cooled 911.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot more power than that
of
thing,
course.
even though the dyno doesn't necessarily show it. Driving.
What numbers are you punching out on the rear wheels on that car these days?
On the rear wheels at the moment, it's 197 horsepower, so just under 200 horsepower. But the power is dying off at the top end, which I'm pretty much worked out now that it's because my exhaust is too small.
Okay.
I've got 1.5 inch collectors headers on the car.
Sure. Yeah.
And they really need to be sort of 1 5/8, maybe 1 3/4 would open it up a bit more and get that air flowing at high reps.
Yeah, sure. Okay. That's pretty interesting. Even that number though, even that 197, I'm pretty sure that era of 911 would have been around the 150 to 175 at the crank anyway. So you're probably up about 30% on what that car would have originally had, at least.
Definitely. That car, I'm not sure that my car was, by the VIN says it's a base model, but by everything on the car, it's an S. It's got the S brakes. It's got the S, like the Coney suspension, because there's two, they're not interchangeable. Mm-hmm. So I think it's basically an S. The base car was 150 horsepower flywheel and 180 horsepower for the S.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and mine would be, you worked that out, it's probably 230, 240 as it is at the moment.
Yes, that's a big jump on original. That's on factory original.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's great. Yeah, and the I've before we did this podcast, I made a couple of notes of things I'd like to ask you about with regards to your car there, and just your driving experience and your trips and those types of things. Because I see that you do the occasional video of an event, not just welding up stuff in your garage. Yes. So I see you went to Tassie in the last 12 months or so. Was
March last year, just before lockdowns? And
okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And which car did you take for that trip?
I took my 996. Archie, my 996. Basically, and that was an amazing trip. We're actually going again this year, October-ish, I think.
Oh, fantastic.
But it's a reasonably small group that try and keep it small, organised by one of my friends in Canberra, Tian.
Yeah, good.
And it's so much fun. Just a bunch of Porsche guys. We drive down, catch the ferry over. It's actually a really great way to travel. The ferry across, because you get on in the evening. Takes a while to get the car on to sort of organise it all, but the cars all go in the base of the ship. Then you can just go up, sit in the bar and have a drink or something, and then go to your own cabin, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and you're there. You get off the boat, and you've got a night's accommodation as you travel and get there.
Sure.
It's a really
and when you take that part of it into consideration, it actually, when you consider that it is an overnighter, that actually the cost of the trip is diminished significantly, because if you didn't, you'd have to pay to stay somewhere, wouldn't you? So
Well, even if you're going to fly somewhere, flying takes so much, like takes a whole day, whereas this really, you've got all of the day before and you've got all of the day after, because the travel is just the nighttime, whereas normally flying would be in the middle of the day or even it's early morning or whatever. By the time you get to the airport early enough before your flight, and then
you're mucking around
from the airport to wherever you need to go. We've already got the cars. We're right there. Like we're
perfect.
It's a really good way to travel, but it's not cheap. But yeah, like you said, if you factor in the fact that you've got accommodation paid for as well, it's actually not a bad deal.
Yeah, and I imagine that you guys would have gone down looking for Targa Tasmania stages and things like that. Is that what following some of those roads?
I think it's pre-organised. It had been run a couple of times before I went down. I got there for the first time last year, and so we cover a lot of the Targa Tasmania stages. There was like last year there was 2 track days, so we did a day at Baskerville, which is a really fun little track.
Sure. Yep.
Just out of Hobart, and then a day. We had a day with the Porsche Club Tasmania at Symmons Plains in the on the way back, and that was it was just. But the bulk of it is just a bunch of guys are all interested in the same thing. The range of cars, we went from everything from like last year was from Stu in his old SC, his old very tired 3-litre SC, which he's just rebuilt the engine of, which is much better, and up to Tony had a 991 GT3 RS. So there was a big range of cars, but we all had a ball, and it's just it was just such a such a great trip. And you mentioned that you might have seen part of the video, but those videos take so long to edit, so much work to film and edit, and it gets half the views of my one that do in the garage.
Of you building an oil tank.
I can do one of my garage videos. I can edit that in an hour and a half now. That's sort of my I've got my, obviously I'm doing 2 videos a week, so I've really worked out how to get my editing down and how to do the whole thing. But yes, I'm quite looking forward to getting out again. It was great getting out last week with a bunch of guys, and I think it's worth, if you're going to make a trip over from Perth for anything, I think that Luftwasser next year is definitely worth coming.
Yeah, that sounds like it. We're there's a few of us over here that are we were hoping to get over there this year with our cars. What we'll very likely do is chuck them on the train to Adelaide and then drive from Adelaide. So
a lot less painful.
It's all about perspective. Like when you live here in WA, everywhere's a long way away. So it's not like it's like we bought about 5 years ago. We bought my wife a car in Melbourne, and didn't even think twice about flying over, picking up, driving it back, and it's a 3-day thing from getting on a plane to when you get home again, and it's almost look, my friend who I did it with last time, he's described it as it's spiritual when you're out there 13 hours, hardly see another soul, have conversations that take 6 hours, because someone says, look at that, there's a tree over there. And then 10 minutes later you go, I think there's something under it. It's a whole different world. So it must be like what it's going through Death Valley or something like that. It's that whole concept,
Well, you mentioned the hay plain before, because I grew up in Adelaide and I've been in Sydney Sydney area for the last 20 odd years. Mm-hmm. The amount of times I've driven over the hay plain, and some of that is like there is no trees. Yeah. There's no, the road's dead straight. I think they add pinks in it every 5 Ks just to
keep you awake.
There's no hills, there's no trees, there's no nothing, just nothing for, as far as you can see. It's
classic.
Really boring.
Yep, it is. And with the Tassie trip, and you mentioned the track days, and you're obviously doing a bit more track work, and you bought the Boxster to do more track work in, and there's obviously more of that going on in your video content. So I imagine so in your life as well. And how, and with regards to you're getting more experience at doing it and getting better at actually driving, which comes through the experience in driving on track. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the whole driving a slow car fast versus driving a fast car slow? Like I often, go to the club events and things where you see the latest drivers in 991 GT3s and they're getting overtaken by 3-litre SCs because the driving ability and the thrill. And it's not just on the track as well. This is a topic that's close to my heart because I drive a very low-powered Porsche that weighs only 750 kilos. So it's a lot of fun to drive on the road. I've never tracked it just because I don't want to do that to that car. But I do really enjoy, a car whose ability I can get to the end of as opposed to a car that is too good for me to ever exploit. What's your opinion on that topic?
I'm really about slow car fast. That was unfortunately I blew the engine in the Rockster first, but my plan is to build that car to be faster than the GT3, and it will be adding more power as I'm already doing an Audi V8 swap in it. But that was more because the engine's blown, so that's the engine I'm going to put into it, and it bolts up to the standard Boxster gearbox. A lot of people don't realise that the Boxster actually has an Audi front-wheel drive gearbox in the back of it, so that's why I went with the Audi engine because it's just bolt on.
How do those 5 reverse gears go?
The amount of people who said that and they're like, but is the engine rotating the wrong way now? It's going backwards. It's like, no, the engine's facing the same direction. It's just moved back in the car. It's all the same.
I just had to say it. That's all.
No. I got so many comments of people like, I don't understand, but you turn the engine around. I'm like, no, I'm not turning the engine around. The engine stays the same way. It's in the middle of the car now. But yeah, I really enjoy being able to drive like faster. And even we noticed in Tassie, we were doing some very spirited driving, and any of the twisty road stuff, basically the guy who was in the front of the pack, Trev, one of my mates has his box rod, which is basically like my Boxster. It's a base 2.5 Boxster that he's been trying to kill the engine of for years and thrashes the hell out of it, and it won't die. And that thing is an absolute weapon. It's not super fast on the straights, but to actually, I'm not one for doing high top speeds. I don't particularly care about seeing how far I can put the speedo, but I want to be quick around the corners, and you're hard pressed to beat anything like that. That Boxster was just as quick as that GT3 RS around any of the corners.
It sounds like that was your motivation to actually get one of those cars from that trip, was it?
Yeah, well, maybe not that trip, but seeing what Trevor done to his car and how cool you managed to make those cars. I used to really hate them, like everybody. I think they just sort of thought it was the. I remember when they came out, it was all the poor man's Porsche, the hairdresser's car, blah blah blah. And I've really come around to the early cars. I think they can look really good. I'm not a convertible fan, I must be honest. I'll always have the roof up because I find you're either sunburn or freezing cold. It's just never comfortable. I I need a roof for me. But but on the driving side of things, I really like being able to show that you can drive. It's more about the driver than just having the more powerful car. Yeah. And don't
get me wrong, the more power is nice, but it's unnecessary. It can certainly hide a lot of inability.
Yes. And I know I really like driving. I've actually got a sim rig set up. It's another one of my most popular videos, actually. It's got about 1 million views now. This really basic sim rig I set up. I when I get a bit of time, I jump onto iRacing, and I really enjoy jumping on the simulator and being able to pit my skills against other people who are driving the identical car. So,
Sure.
I mean, they're not as much. I think a lot of people consider them like video games. Don't necessarily see how accurate they are. And I found my real driving has gotten so much better after spending a lot of time on the simulator, because they are the tires on the simulator. The tires have to heat up and then they go off, and the amount of fuel you have in the car makes a difference.
Sure.
Like they're very, very accurate, and and I think, so my driving has definitely improved quite a bit on the track. And I give my mate heaps. I actually have my own Stig for the Boxster videos. I have my mate Spike Goddard, who drives the car as well, and he's raced. He started racing Formula 4, then he raced Formula 3 in the UK and won that series, and then raced Formula 3 in Europe against Carlos Sainz and Vettel and a bunch of the top Formula 1. He did an F1 test with Force India, so he's driving the car, and I was within 0.2 of a second of him at the local track, so which I was quite chuffed about. So
I would be too. It sounds like the guy can pedal.
Yes.
I was actually listening. It's interesting you mentioned about the sim, because I was listening to a podcast just yesterday or the day before, and one of the European Carrera Cup teams gave a seat to a simulator driver, and never driven a race car before.
Yep.
Okay, and in the first dry event, that driver actually won that first race.
Yeah.
Never been, didn't do testing. It was his first day out. He tested in the qualifying and practice sessions, then went out and won. In the wet, terrible. But, in the dry, he was just, for his first time ever out in one of the new, or not the latest Carrera Cup car, but the 991.2 Carrera Cup car. So it was, fascinating to hear that the sim thing, and like, let's face it, the drivers use those sims nowadays just to hone their skills. You talk to Dan Ricciardo, he spends more time on one of those than he does in a normal F1 car. Yeah,
well, getting actual seat time at a track is, even if you're a Formula 1 driver, is still not, you can't just do it all day, every day, whereas you can jump on, at whatever time and be driving in 5 minutes, and it takes a while to get used to how to feel the car, because obviously in some ways I find driving a real car a bit easier in some respects, because you can feel what's happening, whereas you have to learn how the simulator tells you how it's feeling. So the feedback in the steering wheel and the sound and things like that. Like,
well, you don't have the G-forces and the holding in the seat around corners and stuff in the sims, do you?
Yeah. Yes, you in a car, you can feel the instant any tyre loses traction and actually what corner it comes from, and that is really well translated through your butt. But on a sim, obviously you don't have that. There's none of that feeling. But
unless you have $1 million sim,
yeah. There's a lot of drivers who've been driving for years who get on the sims and think, no, this is crap. It's nothing like the real thing. I think it's mostly because you need to be able to learn to feel it's the simulator. But once you actually learn that and translate that the other way from the sim to the road, it definitely helps, particularly in being smooth on the throttle, smooth off the throttle, the just weight transition, and also taking the best line, getting power out of the corner. I know when I first got on the track, I always thought it was about braking as late as possible and just hang on around the corner and corner as fast around the corner as possible, and that's slow. So getting braking early and getting on the power early is so much faster, and things like that is what I've learned over lots of time on the sim. So
fantastic, and also memorizing a track. A sim is a great tool for that. Imagine how much longer it would take you in real life to remember all the corners around the Nürburgring.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, I'm definitely not amazing at, but I've done so many laps on the Nürburgring on a simulator that I think I'd be able to at least know what's coming up.
Have you been there before?
On the real thing. Sorry?
Have you been to the Nürburgring before?
I have not, but that is definitely
on the list. Yeah, sure.
Which
I've not either. I'm just curious. That's all. So with the 911s,
yes,
with both of them, what are the future plans? What do you for the cars?
The Archie, my 996, is I'm just going through and tidying it up. So I've gone through and done all the basic maintenance things. I've done the IMS bearing. I've done the water pump, and it's covered in stone chips on the front, particularly from Tasmania. So I'm going to sort of repaint the front and just making it a really nice, neat car.
Okay.
I've been quite vocal about the fact that I really hate the interior in the 996.
Does the 996 have that horrible volcano grey plastic in it like the 997s?
It has some. See, I don't mind that part. That it has some of that. That's actually probably the nicer part in the 996.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No. Like mine being just the ones that had the leather pack. That particularly, I've got some friends with some 996.2s turbos, and they have the leather dash and stuff like that. It looks much better. It looks much better in black. Yeah. Okay. That is a big upgrade. Mine has got like this horrible sort of molded plastic door trims and mine's got the grey interior, which does not help it at all.
Sure.
The interior of the car, I think, makes a big difference to me because that's the bit that you see when you're driving all the time. You know.
Sure. Yep.
Everybody else sees the outside, but
are you going to do that yourself?
Sorry.
Are you going to redo the interior yourself in that car?
No, that's still the daily. I'm not going to spend. I've got enough projects at the moment. That will just. I might repaint some of the seats and like leather dye the seats where the bolsters are worn and things like that, and tidy that up. Mm-hmm. But that car I'll probably move it on. I wouldn't mind swapping that for a 997 or something like that down the track. But we'll see. I
wouldn't be surprised if you could do that without changeover in the near future, because the way 996 prices are going compared to 997, that whole like 964, 993 thing seems to be going on in the marketplace at the moment. It's just amazing what's going on with the cars. So look, anyway.
It's gone up a lot since I bought it. That was the cheapest one in the country. I paid about $40,000 for that.
Look, it doesn't feel like that long ago that they're only about $30,000 either, does it? Let's face it. But
it's now it'd have to be worth in the 50s at least.
At least. The fact you've done the IMS in it as well. That's a value add to anyone that's buying one.
Yes, which was part of one of the main reasons. To be honest, I'm not that worried on the early cars that have the dual row IMS. I don't really see it. I really don't think it's this huge issue. Same with on the 997s. It can go, but so can a million other things happen on a car.
Yeah.
But the single row IMS is which is not just on the 0.2s. I found actually it's
in the 997.1s as well, isn't it?
They have a bigger one, so wouldn't really be worried about that. They've got a bigger single row. It's actually from mid-2000 onwards. I believe what actually happened is that the factory that was supplying the bearings to Porsche was burnt down, and they had to get a replacement really quickly. So they went from this big dual row bearing to a smaller single row bearing, and that's when it fails. So it's just,
if it fails.
Yes, and those ones are much more likely to fail. And I believe there was a class action lawsuit made in the US against Porsche at the time.
Okay,
and they had the 997s and the early 996s on there as well, and then they ended up dropping them off the class action lawsuit because there weren't enough cases to make it a class action
thing. Yeah, sure. Sure. Okay, so there's not much going on with that car then. What about Harry? So you're obviously going to do something about that rear suspension or wheels or do the guards or something by that bubbling or whatever you mentioned earlier?
Harry, I mean, that was only really happened when I had a couple of big guys in the car. There was a lot of extra weight in the car on a really bumpy road. That's when it was an issue. It was only on that one drive. There was no other scrubbing the whole trip.
Okay.
But it would really look better with 15s. I think 15s are the right size for that car.
Of the era, that type of thing.
Sorry?
Of the era, that type of thing,
Yeah, exactly. And I want to redo the carpet in there. I'm not happy with how the carpet is, and the dash needs redoing. I need more airflow and things like that. So I'm going to redo some of these bits and pieces on the interior of the car just to bring it up to standard. That'll be a constant evolution, that car, because it is. That's the keeper. Other cars may come and go, but that one is the one to hang around.
Well, it's a cracker of a car. Great colourway. I love the orange purple combo. I think it's, for cars of certain times of development, that whole thing is fantastic. I think you've done a great job there.
Well, I think that's also a thing that helped my channel, is because the controversy of the purple interior.
Oh, really?
If I painted that car in black with a black interior, I think that video wouldn't have had anywhere near the views. I think,
or if your channel was relying on a silver 996 with a grey interior, I think you've got the same problem.
Well, exactly. Like, it's as the 996 is a great car. I just don't like the interior, but the rest of the outside I think looks really good. I'm quite happy with the headlights, so they don't turn me off.
Yep. I think it's everyone's had 25 years to get used to them. I don't think there's the controversy that there used to be for them. Exactly. Which is reflected in the resale value of the car these days. Let's face it.
Yeah, and it drives great. It's so good. I mean, it could use some more torque. As I drove mate's 997S, and the torque and the gearing is better in the 997. I find the gearing in the 996 is really high.
Okay.
So second gear, it redlines about 120 k's an hour. So it's really high gearing. So I find, particularly if I'm on a country road, we're driving with some mates, and you sort of slow down to turn a 90-degree corner, you don't really, you're still flowing. You don't really want to go back to first. You never want to go back to first, but you take off in second, and it's just
bogs down, does it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It really takes a while to get those revs up.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. That's what you mentioned is the common complaint with the all the Cayman GT4s. The same. The gearing's just off.
Although
is the only way to describe it.
A lot more torque, but I think like the gearing, I don't know whether they do the gearing for 0 to 100 times or what they do, but it's still
for my video channel. So look, overall, I really appreciate your time today, Jeff. It's been nice chatting, and I do enjoy watching your videos when you post them. I'm really enjoying the Ferrari build process. That I am mildly concerned that we're both going to be retired before you get it completed. I'm
not. I think it's probably another 12 months. It's not Project Binky. Those guys have been going for 6 years or something. I've been going for 18 months. I think there's another 12 months in it. So
sure.
It's not terrible.
Are you going to paint it red?
No.
Interesting.
I actually, that's the first I've actually mentioned publicly. I won't mention the actual colour I'm going to paint it.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah,
but
it won't be Rossa Corso.
It can't be red because they're all red. Everybody paints all those Alphas red, and there's too many red, so it can't be red.
Fair enough.
Even though it would look great in red, it'd look fantastic in red. They're all there. They're all red. No,
I'd have to say my favourite 105 bodied Alpha I've ever seen is actually a navy blue that I've with gold. Those Campagnolo wheels.
Yep.
So I saw, and it had like the gold badging on it, and the whole thing. It was very 80s. Don't get me wrong, but my goodness, the colour just worked. It just pumped the guards. It just, some colours make cars look certain ways. And the navy blue or a midnight blue or whatever it was a nice touch. So look, I'm looking forward to seeing it when it does get completed. I'm sure you're very looking forward to firing the thing up and just getting that point where it can turn wheels type thing. Yeah.
Well, it's getting closer. I mean, at the moment, I'm waiting on parts. There's things that are sort of holding me up. But I just got wheels on it 2 days ago. So
fantastic.
It's got the wheels on there now. I've got the roll cage done. The engine is basically all the systems. It's ready to go besides wiring.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to run an independent ECU, or are you using the original Ferrari box on it? How does that work?
I'll be using a Link ECU on that.
The same as what you got on the 911.
Yeah, mostly because the Ferrari ECU is just going to be so hard to get it running. It actually,
I imagine it would be, yeah.
The Ferrari actually runs 2 ECUs. It runs like 2 4-cylinders that talk to each other, and getting the immobilizers off of it and all the rest of it. It's just
so Italian, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just yeah. And look, it's a 2000 model engine, and like I think they came out in 98 or something like that.
Sure,
so you're talking old technology now as well. So
fair enough.
Wiring up to a modern ECU should hopefully be reasonably manageable. Also, things like the crank angle sensor of the Ferrari ECU, I don't have anymore anyway, because that's on the Ferrari flywheel that I don't have.
Yeah, fair enough.
I put a crank angle sensor on the front of it. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it runs. It's all tunable and runnable as the thing. I mean, an engine is an engine, really. Once you put all the inputs into the ECU, it's not a mystery to get it running. It should be.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of that one. It's been I've quite enjoyed the build process that you've been doing on it. Yeah,
look, it's my stuff is very slow. Not for everyone. I can understand that. It's some people don't have the patience for that. They want to see the build done in 2 weeks. Or
as some of your videos of time lapses of the full project from start to finish demonstrate by the number of views they have.
Yes, exactly. They just want to see the finished product and not what's all the
just give me the sugar hit. Just give me the shortened version. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care that you had to rebuild your oil tank 4 times.
Exactly. I mean, there's just so much work that goes into it for one person to be doing it all. Because I don't have a team that are doing it. Yeah,
sure. The sense of achievement must be unbelievable. When you finish your Datsun and finally got that thing out the road. When first time you drove Harry, must have been pretty exciting stuff. Because of the energy that goes into it.
It really is. I mean, the Datsun was, it was still, and even Harry, there was lots of teething problems when they first, like every project. As soon as you get on the road, there's lots of things you need to okay, I got to fix this, I got to fix that. But as the real test actually for Harry was just this last weekend, even though I've had it on the road for 6 months maybe.
Sure.
Is actually being able to get it out, drive it for a couple of thousand Ks reliably, have no issues, drive it on the track and drive it home. And it was just amazing to be able to have something that I built in the garage that actually works and runs and is reliable and comfortable. And it's just
great.
That's amazing. And I know that's why that car is still. I've never really had any sort of sentimental attachment to any cars I've ever owned except for that one. That one's and maybe my first sort of fun car that I ever had, which was a Nissan Pulsar Triple S.
I know the cars. Yeah.
It was a great car.
I hope it was a white one.
Sorry?
I hope it was a white one.
No, it was red.
Oh, it wasn't.
And this is actually what got me into airbrushing, because I was an airbrush artist for 13 years after I got out of the army. And I paint the front was like sort of silver blending into gold with it looked like the paint had cracked off and there was a big snake on the bonnet because I was an airbrush artist and that was the time, okay? There was the time.
Oh, geez. I hope you've posted photos of this on Instagram for the viewers' sake.
It was in Hot Fours magazine in September 2000. So I have got photos and I love that. Had huge at the time 17-inch chrome wheels and that was the era and
fantastic.
It was cool at the time.
Yeah, we'll never go back. Yep. Okay, so look, I'm actually off to a classic cars and coffee event this morning after we finished our chat.
Get moving.
Yeah, so I've really enjoyed the talk and I hope the listeners have enjoyed it too. And I'll put obviously all your YouTube channel details and Instagram details below. And I'm looking forward to upcoming videos. So thanks very much for your time today.
Yeah, no problems. Thanks for the chat. And good luck with your videos and stuff. They're looking good. I really enjoy your content as well. It's good.
Thanks very much, mate. Have a great day.
You too. See you, mate.
Thanks. Bye-bye.